Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trucked Before. I told you we were done with Season 3. We're not. This is the Season 3 wrap-up. Me, Jimmy-Jerome, Keith, taking you through it all. What we liked, the highs, the lows, the in-betweens, the good, the bad, and the very ugly. Speaking of the good, the bad, the ugly, Dirty Story Night. Yeah, they're still out there. We still got them on IABDpresents.com. Are you one of those people who thinks filthy is funny? Do you like to have your childhood ruined? Dirty Story Night is for you. There's at least 2 seasons of competitive erotic stories there. Plenty of titillating tales to tantalize you. Sometimes competitors only had 30 minutes to write their entries. Sometimes it shows. Either way, it's dirty, not safe for work, and you know what? Maybe you and that special someone might supercharge your night. Speaking of supercharge your night, if you and your loved one really want to supercharge your night, go to patreon.com/IABD. You'll feel so good from giving. Oh, the pheromones will just be bursting off your bodies. Love will be in the air. It's baby making time, if you're so inclined. Speaking of things that will turn you on and might get things going, go to our YouTube channel. We got all kinds of cool things there. Nikki tells you how to live your life. Backstage kind of stuff. It runs the gamut. It could be anything. Also, you can go there and listen to our shows. They're handily some of our podcasts. It's all been tracked. Got its own playlist there, so you can check that out there. Our YouTube channel, It's All Been Done Before. It's All Been Done Presents. It's All Been Done Presents.com. And this is it. We'll never talk about Season 3 again, ever again, except for right here on the Season 3 wrap-up of It's All Been Trekked Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trekked Before. We, your regular hosts, are here, finally back together again.
This is Steven.
And Keith.
And Jimmy-Jerome. We're the Kirk, Spock, and Bones of this podcast, I guess. I mean, Steven clearly has Kirk, so I'll take Bones. I like the short sleeves.
That makes perfect sense, actually.
Yeah, I think it does. Damn it, Keith, I'm a doctor, not a podcast host. So...
Fascinating.
Before we get deep in the weeds on Season 3...
I'm married to my podcast.
Colleen would object.
But agree.
I think she'd make you quit. Before we get deep in the weeds, Keith, because you've missed a bunch of episodes here, recording an audiobook, you want to plug that real quick?
Sure. Well, I guess that is one thing I wanted to say at the top, was that I wasn't intentionally abandoning you, as you kept saying in some of those episodes.
We're clearly so mad that we're going to make you plug your book.
It wasn't like I was like, I hate Season 3, I don't want to do it. It's just that I started getting really busy. Yeah, it's a book called The Kishi, Tales from Essuan, and I just finished that in around September or so. It's out on Audible and maybe iTunes. I don't know if it went through there.
Kishi?
Yes.
K-I-S-H-I?
Oh, yes, that's K-I-S-H-I. It's like an adaptation of African folklore.
Who's it by?
And Antoine Bandelet.
Nice.
And it's got some interesting influences to it, certainly. I think that he probably was I can tell by some of the things that came up, he was probably a Star Wars fan of some sort.
I'm sorry. You guys do a whole audiobook for that?
And D&D is Dungeons and Dragons
Sure.
Since people might not know that in 2018.
I think people that are listening to this podcast probably know that. I look forward to hearing it.
You said Keith missed some episodes. I wouldn't say he missed some of these.
Well, I did go back.
And also he went back and watched them. So he definitely did miss them.
He missed some podcast episodes.
Yes, he did.
Is what I meant. So we want to give Keith at least a few minutes here to give some general thoughts or specific thoughts on episodes he missed, so that you get his thoughts too.
Well, I mean, I have things written down from Lights of Zatar on. Before that, though, I did regret not being able to talk about Let That Be Your Last Battlefield, for example.
Oh, yeah.
That, in particular. I listened to that episode that was being recorded at Fringe Fest. West Grandview. And
OGP!
So I think you guys acquitted yourselves fairly well. There were some things that came up. Somebody had an issue with the realisticness of it, or rather the how heavy-handed the episode was, which is a fair criticism to some extent. But I mean, I think that I was thinking about that before, like even coming into the episode, that the mindset back then, just trying to, when you really break down the mentality of people who believe that, if you can think back to things that you believed when you were a child. I'm not going to start pointing out some certain things that could probably get us in trouble. But I'm going to say that when you're taught to believe something from a very young age and you're never talked out of it, it's just something like institutionalized racism or the kinds of like any kind of bigotry like that. It just becomes so ingrained in you that you just don't. It's a blind spot. You to the point you're violently angry and against. I mean, all the anecdotes you guys have brought up as far as little things that you wouldn't think are that important or harmful, that they try to get past the censors or really just the network or whoever. Our sponsors are going to go crazy if we do this thing, or just little things like even having a woman on the bridge in a command role. Of course, we're probably going to get into that more in depth, I think, later in this review. Anyway, the point is that as blatant as that seemed, like, and as ridiculous as the idea of what, because we have the same coloration but just different halves. It takes things like that to knock somebody out of going, whoa, really? I mean, wait. I mean, whether or not it actually did any good or worked, maybe they're preaching to the choir, so to speak, but it takes things that obvious or left hooks from way around, these haymakers, So anyway, there's that.
No, absolutely. I think we talked a lot about that during that episode, about we have to try to look at it through that 1960s lens, and it's quite a different world at that point. What seems heavy-handed now may not have felt heavy-handed then. What other notes do you have on episodes, though?
Okay, so starting with Lights of Zatar. Now, I think that I actually had a good time with all the episodes from then on, oddly enough.
Really?
And
that's when we were really suffering.
I know. I heard.
You didn't even hear the ones we haven't released yet.
Right. And I think part of it is because I probably had a long break to get back to it and come back. I was like, oh, this is fun.
I can't say we finished strong, but not as terrible as
the low part was around Lights of Zatar, in my opinion. And then it kind of bounced back up a little bit.
It seems like you were sort of fatigued.
Yes.
From having been just...
But we had such long breaks between recordings.
Yeah.
Like, we weren't doing it weekly. We were recording like once a month. So I don't think we were like worn out from doing too many in a row.
I think it's. I mean, even not even if it's not just me not being here, but I think the dynamic needs to have other people kind of bounce.
Sure.
Yeah.
To change the.
Sure.
It's
we love having new people.
Highway hypnosis, sort of. You're just kind of we're doing this.
Yep.
I really liked it at the beginning. I would say it started off as something that seemed intriguing to me. You see the idea of these mysterious lights, and they were handling like a good sci-fi procedural. Kirk had a lot of good delivery in it in the first part, like the first half, and then after I wrote that, kind of started going downhill. And obviously the relationship, you guys pointed that out with Scotty and
Love for Scotty.
Mira Romaine, just started seeming a little odd, the kind of.
It was weird.
Yeah, we better take Scotty's feelings into consideration before we deal with her. Yeah, I said that, and as good as Kirk was at the beginning, I noted that he had one super stereotypical read at the end. I guess when he's trying to snap Romaine out of it or do something to help her, just you gotta do this. You gotta just over the top there. After that, I had Methuselah, which what did I say here?
Requiem.
Man. I only had 3 notes there. One was, it seemed like they had a fairly futuristic-looking flat screen TV that she was watching.
Yeah.
Like that was...
that picture was great on that thing.
Yeah.
Crystal clear.
Well, I mean, it was more remarkable that they had something that was shaped like, I think, what we have as modern-day flat screen TV. Mm-hmm. Although they do the thing that bothers me when I notice it, which is when they're watching security footage, which is just like an edited view of like they're just replaying part of the episode as though somebody's like doing the cuts and the zoom ins and camera
That's how
switches.
Sophisticated TV will be in the future. They'll decide what you want to watch.
Yeah.
Oh, when you have a dozen drones circling, it can do all the cuts.
Well, the M5 programmed that, or M4, or whichever.
The Telosians adapted it.
God, the thing where where Spock had to say, had to keep saying, maybe pay less attention to Reyna and let's. Our
Pay
starship
less
is like...
to the girl, yeah. That was the actual line he said.
Yeah, the demeanor was just unbelievable. The idea of him just not being preoccupied with, the epidemic on the starship. Uh-huh. You got to be practical and say, of course, there's nothing we can do except wait. But still, he was just so... And, my last note, that last scene, I wrote GDI Kirk. you just met her, you love her, just him pining with his head down and just, he's just so broken up, and they're just talking about him like he's in there and just...
And if they'd hooked up, he would have forgot about her just as soon.
It's the crazy thing, though.
Way to even. What do you think?
Oh, man. I had a lot of fun with that one. I can see why...
We did, too.
I was surprised, because in my memory, that was one I hated, and I like I said, I think in the episode I say, I was surprised how much I was like, no, you know what? We're taking a different look at this. Going in, I thought I am going to hate this as much as I did originally, but no, I didn't.
The songs were pleasant. I think, was Leonard Nimoy actually singing them?
I think so.
It sounded like his voice, even though they had the guy lip syncing for him.
Yeah.
They do that thing that they do quite often in the series of tapping into 60s culture references with the hippies and so on, making those obvious kinds of shorthand
they were space
things.
hippies.
Yeah. But the most notable thing for me was the freak out I had when I realized that it was a sample from a White Zombie song called Starface. Just when one. We are one. Yeah, one is. Are you one, Herbert? I am not Herbert. I was like, oh my God, that is. I could look it up. And, one thing that I did note that I thought was interesting was that it seemed surprisingly topical, not because they were hippies, but something about the way the counterculture movement was sort of being hijacked by their leader and being subverted.
Yeah.
And I don't know how often that story had played out, America back then, but we've certainly seen it happen since then. Even more recently, like the fake grassroots movements of sorts. That somebody has a clear agenda. Cloudminders. I put in WTF. right after the opening title, you have Kirk talking, but his mouth wasn't moving. The shot that did you see that?
Yeah.
I don't know how some of these things seem like. There's another episode or two later on where it seemed like the sound sync was off, and that could just be the thing. Whatever. These black and white TVs.
Especially season 3, there were a lot of let's use an old clip and put a voiceover in.
Yeah, like we caught Chekhov suddenly missing from the navigator and back.
That too is. Yeah, I actually laughed out loud at Spock's. She said, Droxine said something to him about, never met a Vulcan before. I've never met a work of art. That's what the creepy thing her father said, essentially, right before.
Right, yeah.
Thought it was a very good, dry kind of. But that seemed to be the kickoff for Spock having some love interests. This season, which and I thought handled pretty well, actually.
I did too.
They were kind of expanding the canon as far as this is how it actually works for Vulcans. As far as we've told you this thing about Pon farr, but don't pay too much attention to that.
Yeah.
Don't be
Well, Pon farr isn't the only thing.
Right.
Like they've got this 7-year mating drive, but you think Sarek is only sleeping with Amanda once every 7 years?
Right.
By the way, I have a 7-year mating drive too, but it doesn't bother me the other 6 years.
They kind of hinted at it, didn't really come right out and spell it out, but just the idea that it wasn't just that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One of those would have been funnier at the time, I guess, if you had just watched it. Like I noted the troglodyte who had snuck in was too extreme to be taken alive when he just dove out and just free falling off the edge. Getting back, this kind of taps into the other the Let That Be Your Last Battlefield, in the sense it was, I think, a less heavy-handed. There was certainly, the message was there, but it was a much more sophisticated way of looking at the way that socioeconomic disadvantages can tether people down to a certain place.
Yeah.
And the view from most other people who are in a position of privilege not being able to comprehend it, or insisting on looking at it through a certain lens to justify the position they're in. Like the leader there, the lead, I can't remember what they're called, the lead Cloudminder or whatever.
Yeah, sure.
He was at every turn, he was just trying to cling to that power and even kind of let it slip a couple of times. That was his motivation for it. But he just refused to believe to the very end of that episode. He was just, which is, I thought was pretty realistic too. He just wasn't going to budge on the idea that these people are simply inferior. They're bred to be that way, in his opinion.
Well, and to be fair, Droxina knew what it was like to not have much clothing. And I applaud.
Vana actually ended up being my favorite, I think.
Me too.
The crush.
Yeah.
I said the midriff assassin, but
we'll
really
get
liked
into your season overall here soon, Keith. But I'm going to go ahead and make a note that you like Vana.
I enjoyed that one though. I mean, it was pretty irritating at certain times, but just Actually, I found it affecting because it's still pretty relevant today. I mean, these are the things you hear people saying about.
I mean, it was almost literally the 1%.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thing going on.
They were definitely Republicans up in the clouds.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just sounded like the talking points right there. It was like somebody talking about welfare or something else.
Anything else on the Cloud Minders? You ready for Savage Curtain?
It's good enough, just
Savage Curtain, what do you think?
I wrote the Savage Curtain is savage.
Yep. That's a good summation.
Yeah, I wish I could have bottled my reaction for when they're looking at the view of space and Lincoln just shows up. What is going on?
I think we said as we watched, we're like, oh, we wish we could watch this with Keith.
Yeah.
We wish you were here
I just died. I was like, where are they going with this? And,
we had lots to say about Lincoln. Daniel Day-Lewis looked good, though.
He did.
Good.
The odd thing about it, though, I thought it was surprisingly good for whether or not you like the quality of the episode itself or the idea of shoehorning Lincoln in particular. I thought it actually ended up being really good sci-fi.
We have it ranked 7th from the bottom. We weren't not fans.
The Lincoln thing. I think one of the reasons why they did that, or one of the uses he served when he was on the ship, was finally as if things that she'd been doing like in the first season of walking somebody through the idea of being a newcomer from the past. Here are the future advances we actually have. Here's how these things work in the ship. Things we had to kind of maybe they explain, maybe they don't.
They should have just let him put him in quarters where he could get on the computer and access everything.
Yes, absolutely.
But
and then he could later sexually assault Janice Ray.
Oh God! But
Charlie X reference.
Go way back.
But it's the sort of thing that I think modern day futuristic sci-fi things would find a newbie character that could be the audience, proxy to come in and have a reason to explain certain things to us. And it seemed to be like a long time since they had. They finally got to that toward the end of the third season. I thought that the way that they were approaching trying to figure out what was going on was actually very interesting. Whether as ridiculous as the Lincoln thing was, Kirk kept admitting, I know this is ridiculous, let's play along and figure this out. It was just a very kind of measured response to things. And God, the battle itself was strange. However, they finally did the thing that you've been saying they should do the entire series, where they were throwing in future history.
Colonel Green.
Yes.
And just where's this been like the entire series up to that point?
Collis.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which like left and right, like.
Although Surak and Collis are not future history; they're past alien history.
True.
Well.
But Colonel Green was future history.
Scotty used the phrase Arcturian dog bird. So I was like, why finally a crazy alien type? Yeah. So I think I noted it was better at being a procedural than Zatar was. Like it was what Lights of Zatar started off being that seemed to have promise. They followed through with it throughout the episode. In this one, I thought
it was better than Zatar. I'll agree with you.
What did you think of the Galbedian, whatever the rock creature?
Well, yeah. So that was it's another thing that seemed kind of thought-provoking and kind of triggering as well.
We loved that.
Yeah, we loved him
so much.
The way that he just kind of he was using false equivalencies essentially. Yeah. This is very much a very today thing of saying you guys are just the same thing. You think you're good guys, bad guys, whatever. Kirk's points out very well that his motivations were completely different than just power grabbing. Is you put him in a position where you're now fighting for the survival of your people, or you're fighting to save these other people, and these other people are just
there's a better way to do that, to pit good against evil or whatever. Yeah, we got into that and like how would they not know what it's just another advanced race coming up with some weird arbitrary thing.
That is that in itself is problematic. However, I did find it relevant to today because of the kinds of debates people would have about one political party being just as bad as the other one.
Right.
When the motivations aren't the same thing. It's like you're you're intolerant of the intolerant.
Right. Reverse racist.
Yes, that thing too. Oh yeah.
All our yesterdays.
Okay, that's one of the ones where I noted the sound sync seemed to be off a lot of the time when the old man in the library
we didn't
was
notice that at all. So maybe that was a Netflix thing.
Just ever so. He was. Yeah. Very few notes on that, except I said I sighed deeply at the explanation for Spock's regression, like being in the past would somehow... What? I mean...
Yeah.
He regressed, but McCoy somehow did not.
Well, I guess in ancient history, they're implying, without really explaining it, there's some sort of thing that's being broadcast from Vulcan that is somehow
right.
keeping them all under control, or...
Yeah, we got into it. There was a lot of weird... They were making it up as they went along, literally, as far as the rules of the Atavachron and how it affected people. And however it served their purposes for the plot. Yeah.
So the thing that bothered me the most about the whole Zarabeth thing and the cave thing was just...
Her outfit.
They didn't think to ask
That
her.
didn't bother me.
Spock had the excuse of being barbaric, I guess, for not being logical enough to say, okay, well, how do you know you can't leave?
Right.
No, never once did they have her explain, well, they told me that they prepared me in a certain way and I can't go back, or I've seen somebody try to go back and they got killed, or any number of things. So she was lying about them not being able to go back. Did she think she can't go back because she won't be allowed?
Well, and that... I couldn't figure out how McCoy knew that she was lying about it. Because he never really said, oh, I figured this out. He just started accusing her of it.
Yeah.
There's that as well.
And based on the work habits of TOS and his clones or whatever, I don't think they actually did prepare people. They just told them that. I think that was what we came up with, right? Was they just told them that so they wouldn't come back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they wouldn't have an epidemic.
Could be that too. So yeah, that's pretty much it for Turnabout and Tudor then. So the final episode.
Yeah.
Man, I enjoyed that a lot more than I thought I would.
It's our favorite of this batch you've been talking about.
Yeah.
For sure.
I was like, come on, when they're doing the setup of the, during the cold open, and it started to progress, and they just went at it so hard that it turned itself around for me.
Once you accept that the body switch could happen, the rest of it,
which we'll get into more in our very special Freaky Friday episode. No, seriously, they were releasing between season 3 and the animated.
We're gonna watch the 1977, the original.
Oh my god! So I guess there are a couple ways to look at this. One, as just the idea of the trope. I don't know how often it had been used by that point. Kirk was so comedic, and maybe unintentionally or intentionally, it was hard to say, but the over-the-top hysteria, as even Scotty called it. The crew just really sold it for me. I really loved just watching them interact with and try to puzzle out what was going on and decide whether or not they believed it. And even the trial, the overused trial thing that they did was just, it worked there. It was kind of fun.
Yeah, and it was one of those things that we might have talked about in the episode, but I think it was one of those things where there have definitely been episodes where like, how do they not realize something weird is going on? And in this episode, they immediately like, this does not make sense. This is not the guy we know.
Yeah.
And maybe you can't get away with that earlier in the series rather than later, but I feel like you can. But anyway.
But the way they had to approach it, just giving us more insight into the way that Starfleet procedure would work on certain things, and the way that a slight role reversal with Spock and Bones as far as like the logic that. Or rather, Bones insisting on having empirical evidence before he could move forward with this thing, even though Spock had another means of verifying it for himself, but still.
My biggest problem with this was the motivation of a woman can't be a captain. When
There's that.
Other canon contradicts that.
That is a very important thing that I wanted to get to as well. Is just, do you know if this was written by a woman or not, that episode?
We looked that up, and it was not.
Yeah, it was Rod and Mary's idea, and
then some other guy wrote it. What I had a problem with, though, is in The Cage, which was not canon yet, but the Menagerie was, we saw a woman first officer. I was trying to remember if they've mentioned a female captain in the series. Obviously, Discovery has shown their female captains before this. Right. So my only explanation for this and trying to justify to make it fit in the canon was that was just how she consoled herself. Is, they just make it tougher on women. And Kirk didn't contradict her because he was just trying to not provoke her further.
It seemed like he even suggested something to the effect later on in the episode, somewhere toward the end, that this was her hang-up, essentially.
Yeah. So that's how I took it, because the canon establishes women. We don't think you could have a woman first officer, as we saw in The Cage, without there being women captains. That just doesn't make sense.
But the other side of that, of course, is they're limited by what the network allows them to say and do, which is a bizarre thing. But they can't even just kind of do an end run around it by referring off camera to some other female captain or other female
Yeah, like there was Captain Georgiana Philippa. She was great, like 10 years ago.
Well, we talked about it maybe in the podcast, the specific podcast about the kind of Roddenberry's thing, like, you guys wouldn't let me have a senior officer.
Yeah.
Screw you, I'm going to find a way around. And this is kind of my...
Which you all heard us discuss 2 weeks ago.
You did. Yeah.
But that's
although, Kirk as possessed by Janice Lester, I've seen people act that hysterically at presidential press conferences. In the last
man.
I thought Shatner did a good job acting.
I did too.
That was fun.
Although he did. Did you find it strange that Shatner wore a Michael Myers mask for like this whole series?
That's fantastic.
I thought you'd like that joke, so I can make it again.
And I had been worried that I was curious to see going back if it was going to be campier than I remembered it.
This episode?
Shatner's performance. And I thought he was fine. I think his acting crazy was Janice Lester was crazy, not because she was a woman, because she was angry and
although a few things slipped in there.
Oh, there were a couple things.
But
the filing of the nails, we really hit on.
I didn't catch that. No, I was more about Scotty's comment about hysteria toward the end. There was some stuff. I think again that's a testament to just how awful things were in the '60s for women and minorities.
Thank God that's all done now.
We joke about that, but it is so much.
It is better. It is better.
The fact that they couldn't even conceive of how to portray what would have been happening, the way that all those things are sort of. I don't think they realized they were doing it. Kind of happened as far as the way they're portraying this woman who, her plight. I mean, the fact that there weren't a lot of examples they could have pointed to in the real world within the story to contradict her is kind of telling the sense that you couldn't just say, what? There were plenty of female captains now. Something else she said almost made it seem like she couldn't get in the starship at all. Like, not even just as a captain. She said, with you in space, sort of, as if she wasn't even cleared for any sort of officer position because
she was a woman. She was crazy.
And
she didn't pass their mental health screenings.
There certainly were cases that evident for that as the episode went on, but also
you notice though in the 23rd century, mentally insane woman, they didn't allow her to purchase a firearm. Just saying, something we should think about.
Well, maybe it has to do with Kirk.
That was pretty much it. Except just also we haven't really seen many female officers in the series. Another kind of
not enough.
Yeah.
I mean, some of that was the restrictions of television in those days, but anyway.
A lot of them have really good jobs on the starship, but not.
Sure.
All right. So one last thing that bothered me, certainly, viewing it as, I don't know if they knew that this was going to be the last episode they were ever going to do, or not.
I'm sure they knew, but I don't think they designed it to be.
Yeah, they didn't have the finale trappings, but we talked about there were a couple things that felt like.
I don't remember exactly what he said, but as a final thing to say in the series, just sort of like he just trailed off. It's like, and in this,
if only.
Yes, that's what. If only.
Yeah.
Fade to black. It's like what?
Yep. Well, that's because
a good segue.
That's because the mob came up the turbo lift and assassinated them all. That's why you got the black. Good segue. Let's talk about the season as a whole.
If only.
Spent a little more time talking than I intended.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Let's start with Keith. I'm going to give you 2 rapid fire. You have to make a decision.
Oh man.
Which of these 2 episodes is better? You ready?
Okay.
This is like when you're at the eye doctor.
Yeah. Which is better, A Lot of Troyes or All Our Yesterdays? Yeah, we're not going to go over all the rankings with you, but I do want to do these tiebreakers for us. This is where Steven and I couldn't decide between ourselves.
I think there were fewer holes in Alana of Troyes, unfortunately.
So Alana of Troyes wins?
Yeah.
Okay. Keith has spoken. In our official rankings, that is official. Alana of Troyes comes in at number 9 for the season. All Our Yesterdays is number 10. And Keith, now you have to decide number 12 and 13 for us. Which is better, The Tholian Web or Let That Be Your Last Battlefield?
I would say Let That Be Your Last Battlefield is better.
Okay.
Simply because The Tholian Web was so
disappointing?
Yeah.
That's accurate.
It just set up all these things, that cool looking stuff, and just didn't make any sense, and it wasn't,
Well, before we dive more into the rankings, because we will come back and revisit our top and bottom of the season, What overall trends did you sense in season 3? Like, what were your favorite elements of season 3? Least favorite elements of season 3?
I was warning everyone about it coming into it.
You're right.
And yeah, the ones that I loved, I don't think I was disappointed by the ones that I loved in the past. There were some that I hated that I liked or didn't dislike as much. And then we got in that role where it was like, okay, this is the third season kind of. And, we talked about the budget cuts and Roddenberry not being as involved and kind of a malaise, for lack of a better term, kind of overcoming. And when we started this season, it was like, Spock's reign was insane, but then we had a couple of those good episodes, like, okay, and then as we got through, it was like, okay, now I remember. And lazy is not the right word, but it's just very much, I was thinking about this today, it's kind of like, and maybe this is kind of what happened, it's kind of like what somebody who just kind of casually watched Star Trek here and there thought Star Trek shows should be.
Yeah.
And they wrote them and then produced them with those guys.
Unfortunately, I think when a lot of fans of Next Gen and further think of what original Star Trek is, season 3 is what pops in their head.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yes.
Instead of season 2, which is what they should be thinking about.
Well, that's probably the thing. Do you think that season 3 got more
terrible?
No, more broadcast play because it was more recent than the others.
I have no idea. I could
maybe just maybe it's some of the episodes, like the hippie episode, the episode with the kids, or some of those things are easier to pinpoint. Because I feel like some of the episodes people point to are like,
there's a number of iconic episodes in season 3.
Right, that aren't necessarily good ones, but people, whether they're hardcore or casual fans, know about.
Yes.
And can as a reference point. And yeah, if you came in the first 10 episodes you watched were the middle of season 3, you might be like, I'm never coming back to this. No, this is terrible.
Maybe not. See, well, here's the thing. One of the things
my first episodes of the series were season 3.
Yeah.
The Empath and For the World is Hollow and I have touched.
Although those are two,
which are two in our top 7.
Yeah.
So thankfully.
One of the things I noted, there must be worse things than the worst original series episode.
Yes.
If you think about it, for the time period, for what they were working with.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are, and we haven't determined what the worst is. We are going to determine what the worst is, but not right now.
Right. What I'm saying is that outside of Star Trek, I mean, if you, it's like it's the adage about, I don't know if that's even the right word, the joke about bad pizza or whatever. Even
bad pizza's pretty good.
Yeah,
pizza's like sex.
Even bad Star Trek's pretty good. I don't know. There's a few episodes of Star Trek that are just bad that I don't think are pretty good. Only a few. Like, I think I could count them on one hand, the number of episodes that I would say are just bad.
Well, and, I've said this a lot during this season, which is, there was a lot of bad stuff in season 3, but there were some really great moments surrounded by all this dreck.
Yeah.
And, for me, the end of Requiem from Methuselah, also there's really good episodes.
I mean, the worst parts of season 3 were probably still as good as the original Star Wars film. So,
see, that was a setup for right there. That's the sort of thing I mean. Not Star Wars, but you know what I'm saying. You can look outside of Star Trek and go, well, there's these. Who knows what Gunsmoke was like, for example.
I would rather watch Star Wars than The Lights of Zatar. I'm just going to say it right now.
I heard you say that on one of the recent episodes I was listening to that I wasn't on. Why that was a very good thing that is exactly my point, in the sense that if you're watching it and you're kind of taking the moments where you can get them and not judging the episode as a whole, you can go, I really like this moment right here. And that's kind of like how I was feeling through some of these like the really, really bad episodes. They were almost there a certain place. They hit on something right there, whether it's like 1 minute or a few seconds or whatever, and the rest is, they kill it with something else.
Like that last scene we went back and forth about with Requiem from Methuselah, the whole forget thing. Like, I know in the early 80s when I was really heavy into Star Trek and was reading all the fanzines, as they called them then, I can't say that was, like, people didn't put that up with Mirror Mirror and sit down there forever or whatever, but that was one of those moments that came up a lot in, like, top 10 things people reference or top 20 things people reference. And at the time, I hated the episode. I still don't love it. Yeah.
We've ranked it 4 from the bottom.
Yeah. So I still didn't like it that much now. At the time, I hated it. And it was like, but I still love that moment. And now I do too. But, so yeah, like, it's like, and I think some of that goes to, it was still probably a it was the only sci-fi, or at the time. I mean, you had Twilight Zone that ended before it, but a regular series, and you had. And these are good actors, and Nimoy obviously was still. They stayed committed to it, and I think I mentioned. I thought that was some of the. Again, that's some of the Shatner thing. Is like, here's some terrible material, and he was like so committing to it that he overcommitted. Like, I'm going to have to really sell this, and he oversold it. But
you think Nimoy oversold it?
No, Nimoy. It helped that he was Spock, but I think Nimoy was just he stayed smart, just like Spock. The whole time.
mean, there were. If I'm trying to think of Spock's weakest moments, they're in season 3.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. But it wasn't the acting.
It was about the writing.
It was written.
Yeah.
It was the writing.
Yeah.
There was never a point where I felt that he was delivering something poorly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Kirk, by contrast,
right.
There's a certain point where.
I mean, there are some things even in season 3 where Shatner's brilliant.
Yes,
There really are.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about the final episode, Turnabout Intruder, and I thought for the most part he was really good in that episode.
I did too.
Abnormally good.
Especially, and then we talked about it. Not you can dwell on he's got a woman, he's portraying a woman, but he's not. He's portraying somebody possessing his body.
Sure.
And also portraying a woman who's trying to be a man too.
Right,
so it's not like
right.
she would like try to do something.
Yeah, so
really
I thought he was
flowery.
playing that one, and also the idea of two people fighting and without for all the over the top things that people bust Shatner for. I didn't think he did it.
He was far better in this than when Kirk was split into 2 personalities. And far
well, they were too extreme, so he had to be extreme.
One thing that struck me about season 3 is, as we started season 3, I remember thinking, okay, we're done with the supporting characters getting in development, because that kind of went away in season 2. But early season 3, we got development back for some of the characters, and then by mid-season 3, it went away again.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that they tried to restore some of that. Give me a good plot line for Scotty, Uhura, Sulu, or Chekhov in the last 8 episodes. I dare you. I mean, really.
Scotty met the girl? No.
Some Spock
Chekhov
stuff.
had an ex-girlfriend.
I said no. I'm not counting Spock, McCoy, and Kirk in the opening credits. They got material. I'm talking about the other 4. Sulu and Uhura sat out the last couple episodes.
Yeah.
And Uhura wasn't even on the last. Yeah, that last one.
Yeah.
There was somebody else there.
They ridded her apart, but they gave it to
She had a
Angela.
singing engagement. Yeah.
They gave it to the widow from season 1.
That was actually a character that what?
Well, I don't
Same
think
actress.
they didn't establish in the episode it was the same character, but it could have been. It was the same actress who did 2 episodes in season 1. The one being where her husband was killed on shore leave. Her wedding was interrupted, and then her husband was killed.
I vaguely remember that. That's just.
Same actress. Yeah. Better than White Uhura we got earlier in the season.
So that's not her. So that's not
Would White Uhura be your least favorite member of the Enterprise?
Yes.
I know I'm getting ahead of myself.
That's perfectly okay.
I feel like that's your most vitriolic reaction to any.
I think I agree. I think White Uhura is. I don't even remember her name. I'm calling her White Uhura. White Uhura is what's wrong with season 3. I mean, not really. There are lots of other issues.
Getting back to something I mentioned earlier, with regards to that last episode, I thought that was really good for the supporting cast. A lot of the way that played hinged upon just even small reactions from them. Watching Kirk in confusion, kind of cutting back and thinking about what was going on in the trial, and just I loved all the reactions. I loved their little comments and just.
And that's one of those things of building on the strengths that you've got these people that they've been playing these characters for a while. They know them, and it's much more natural, and you can use that. And obviously, they did here and there, but not enough.
I won't say that every movie gives them all equal time, but the movies do a much better job of balancing the ensemble. Even the one Shatner directed, Star Trek V, where he did not steal it all for himself. Everybody got something to do. So I'm very much looking forward to the films and getting that better balance. Maybe the animated series has the better balance. I don't know. We're going to find out here real soon.
I wouldn't say that they were portrayed as characters very well necessarily in this last episode, but they were given something important to do in the sense that to react. It wasn't like, oh, that's Chekhov or that's Sulu acting a certain
Warp
way.
Factor 9 Captain. Yeah.
It could have been anybody doing that, but they were just playing into I know there's something is wrong here. I'm uncomfortable.
Yes.
One of the things I thought about was I felt like the women in this season, like the guest stars, were more beautiful and maybe a little more scantily clad. But I could be recency bias, but maybe it was like, we don't have great shows, but we can sell this.
I mean, I think there were some beautiful women in season 3.
Yeah.
I don't think they were more scantily clad than other seasons.
Okay, I didn't go through and do inventory, but in my mind I was like,
That is a tough call.
I have it ranked,
Women.
and we
Yeah.
are next week in our series wrap-up going to rank the hottest women of Star Trek. But for now, and we're going to get to the hottest women of the season in a second. But I think there were attractive women in every season. I haven't gone back to balance if season 3 had more than others.
Okay.
But definitely there was skimpy in the early seasons as well.
Oh, well, yeah.
I was inclined to believe you or agree with you because I think we have the perception of season 3 that they were kind of throwing. They were trying to make up for the lack of quality by throwing other things at
yeah.
it. And
We
so,
did get a lot of Batman actors in season 3, which was great.
So it's
I
like,
highly approve
That's
of
another
that.
trend.
so let's throw some names. Let's throw some
Yeah.
women at it. Let's
Yeah.
throw this and kind of.
You know, you may be right. You may be onto something there.
But it feels like that certainly. Whether or not it is true, it certainly
Yeah,
feels
that
like that's
was-
all the episode had going for it.
When I was trying to think themes of the season, what went through my head was might have happened when we did the season 1 and season 2 wrap-ups too.
I think so. But I
also-
think Keith's right. I think they got some bigger names for season 3.
And also, it might be that, again, going back to that lack of quality, that's what stood out for me more than other great developments. Like,
Yeah.
like we had some development for McCoy, some McCoy episodes and Spock moments. And like we said, I thought the Spock moments were some of the best, especially the last, 8-10 episodes. Some of those moments I really liked a lot. And of course, Spock's brain. No.
So while we're talking women, let's go ahead and do our final rankings of women of the season. I want to start with Keith here a little bit because you had the crew woman walking past the screen in the first episode, Spock's brain. And then you were on Romulan Commander for quite a while. Falana replaced her and played with Stepchildren.
What was going on in that episode?
That was the one with the short actor.
Oh, okay. What's his name? Yeah, all right.
Yeah. I can't remember the actor's name right now. He was really good.
I can't.
I just remember how good he was. He was so good. So you had Falana for 3 episodes and then you stopped coming. Which only got us about halfway through the season, a little bit less. And then you mentioned Vana, so we'll toss that in there. Are there any other women that you would like to... I mean, you don't have to pick where they go, but are there any other women that stand out for you?
I mean,
Besides those 4?
the first episode back, and I noted it was probably the recency bias or just the lack of having anything in the intervening time. I noted Mira Romaine just because I was taking notes at the time. That's pretty much it. I mean, I liked both Droxine and Vana in that Cloudminders
we
episode.
just Steven went with Vana like you. I went with Droxine, but I agree. It was a tough choice.
Yeah.
That was that honestly, of all of Star Trek, that may have been the toughest choice between 2 women for a woman of the.
I think so.
So, because we don't have you sorted out by episode, Keith, the longest trend I see is the Romulan Commander stayed a long time. Would the Romulan Commander be your woman of the season, or do you want to pick somebody else?
I think I can probably relate to Vana more at this point, so I'll go with that.
Okay, Vana is your woman of the season. Steven, I'm looking at yours list, and Romulan Commander did hold the spot the longest for you. But you had Morg feeding men in the opening. You had Thierry, Falana, Alan for a few episodes. Lysira, Arena, Vana, Zarabeth, Kirk as Janice Lester. Is where you ended.
Was Kalinda? Did I ever? Kalinda?
Nope.
Really?
Nope.
So I've been following Barbara Boucher on Instagram, and she did a lot of Italian films and stuff after this.
Trying to think what episode. By any other name?
Yeah,
you went some...
Oh,
you
that's
did
great.
have,
Oh.
You did have Kalinda.
I do have. Oh, okay,
Season 2.
that makes sense. All right, cool.
But this season, like I said, Romulan Commander hung on the longest, but you've had a bigger variety this season.
I did, yeah. I went on a run there. I think I'm going to go back to the Romulan Commander.
That's an excellent choice.
Much as I love Vana and Droxina, Zarabeth, Janice Lester, and Kirk's body. No, Kirk and Janice Lester's body.
Kirk and Janice Lester's
That's what
body.
it was. Yeah.
You want to get it on with Shatner if he doesn't look like Shatner.
That's right.
So you're going to stick with Romulan Commander. Which was your longest run, so that's appropriate.
Yeah.
My longest run, Romulan Commander only lasted 1 episode for me because I replaced her with Mirnami from the beginning of the episode. I was specific about from the beginning. But my longest run this season was Deela from Wink of an Eye.
Yeah, that's a good choice too.
I don't think I want to name her my woman of the season. Man, recency bias has me thinking Droxina Zarabeth, but
Yeah.
That's what it does. That's what
I
it's
know,
for.
right? Let me look up a couple of these other names. Lysira. I like.
Be Mary
Oh,
Mother.
that's
Yeah.
that's my cousin.
Yeah.
Not really.
Wait, Lee Merriweather?
Yeah, distant relation. I've never met.
Perhaps.
Probably. Mara, that's the Klingon woman. Who was Dr. Jones? Oh, that was, of course.
You call him Dr. Jones.
No, that was Dana Mulder.
My other thought was Barbara Babcock. She probably would have been my number 2 from Plato's Stepchildren.
You know, I think I'm going to go with Droxine.
All right.
I could be wrong, but I'm going with Droxine. So that'll be my one of season 3. Ranking season 3, as we wind this to a close. Let's look at the bottom first. Our bottom 5, from best to worst, our bottom 5.
But before we get into that,
Yeah.
that reminded me of something I wanted to mention as far as the season 3 trends. When I was listening back to the episodes from early on, when I was still here, the running joke of the season, which kind of fell off the wayside since then, is I hate it. It's number 5.
That's right.
Right. I love it. It's number 5. But sorry, go ahead.
No, that's fair. Our bottom, starting at the top of the bottom, 19, or 20, episode number 20, Whom Gods Destroy, followed by Requiem for Methuselah, and The Children Shall Lead, Spock's Brain, Lights of Zatar. Came in at the bottom.
Man.
Do you think those are a good bottom 5? Should we reorder anything?
I'm definitely a flag flyer for Methuselah, but I know when we discussed it, there's a lot wrong with it.
There's a lot wrong with it, but there was some... Honestly, without the recency bias in retrospect,
Right.
I'm remembering it more favorably.
Yeah.
I'm like, how did it rank so low?
I don't know. Yeah.
Which one?
Requiem for Methuselah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is going back to what I was saying before. It's, none of them, I mean, certainly, if you look at them in a certain way, these are bad episodes. These are bad episodes of television.
Yeah.
However, there are still some moments that made me feel a certain way when I was watching them, and I
Right.
think back about it, or something that amused me, or some little thing that's hard to say, this is the worst thing that blah, blah, blah. But you're ranking them against other Star Trek episodes, so who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, so the way I'm thinking about it right now is when we were in season 1, the bottom 3 were just really, really bad. The bottom 2 or 3, maybe 4, were episodes I don't want to see again.
Of season 1?
Season 1.
Tomorrow's yesterday.
When we get to season 2, I don't know that there's any episode that I don't need to see again. Like, the bottom's Cat Spa.
you can still-
And I would watch Cat Spa again, thinking of it right now. I think I was probably more negative last year.
I'd probably need to watch it again because I don't remember like anything about it. I was watching
Halloween
alone,
episode for lack of a better
so
term.
But I
just
will
remember there being
say-
a giant cat kind of as a scratch.
But I will say in
Yeah.
season 3, the only one that I really don't want to watch again is Lights of
Lights of
Zatar. Like,
Wow.
I don't think the bottom's good. I'd say 2/3 of the season were pretty watchable for me.
Yeah.
I'd say about half were decent episodes when I'm looking at where the cutoff is. Half would be like, let that be your last battlefield.
Okay.
With Fully Web down being not so good.
Yeah.
2/3, I'm saying down the Spectre of the Gun. I'm pretty decent to watch again. Cloudminder's down, not so much. But when you really get down to rewatchability, I'd watch Spock's Brain again. Don't want to watch Lights of Zatar.
All right, I will say that your reasoning at the time was what kind of swayed me as I was listening. I listened to the episode that you guys we were talking about.
Yeah, you just
Lights
have time
of
to
Zatar.
do the last 4, right? The ones that weren't released.
Right.
Yeah. I sent you the audio. You just didn't have time.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's okay. The fact that you watched all the episodes makes me very happy.
Thank you. Well, Zatar then. It just, as I said, it made a good impression on me at the start of it, and it kind of stuck with me even though I was kind of going, as I was starting to go, what? Or getting distracted toward the end of it, but yeah.
Lights of Zatar, for me, is up there with the alternative factor, which is next to last in season 1.
No, what was that?
That was Lazarus.
The Negative Zone. Those are the 2 episodes that I find so boring.
And I
don't
think
wanna watch
that's
again.
that's
It's only
fair
those 2.
about both of
Only
those.
those 2.
Yeah.
I can say that, well, see, one of the things I liked about it at the time was it seemed like it was going to be a straightforward procedural of some sort, them trying to figure these things out. And then it hinges upon whether or not the science is good or makes sense, and it kind of goes,
Yeah.
and then, yeah.
Yeah.
So are we good with these bottom ones?
Yeah, I mean, it's,
I think so. I mean, like I said,
there's nothing I liked so much that I'm like, I had to fight about this. It's just sort of like,
Sure.
Yeah.
yeah, and I think there's some that we're gonna like more than others. When I say others, each other.
Right.
Like Spectre of the Gun, I still don't like,
opinions vary, certainly.
and stuff like that. Requiem I
Gun's
like more.
not good, but it's
yeah.
fun. It's fun to me.
Yeah, I think that's when I held fast to my former notions of hating it.
It came in at 16, so
I
you can
know.
argue it persuasively.
I was outnumbered. Everybody else seemed to enjoy it. I'm like, I can't fight this.
I think listening to it, or listening to the episode where we were talking about it, it seemed like I liked it more at the time than I do in my memory.
Right.
I don't know why. Like,
I think I like it
thinking
more
back.
now than I did at the time.
Yeah.
It's so weird. Thinking back, it was
I
just
still
why
don't
would I-
like it.
That's fair. You know,
Yeah.
we're all going to have those episodes.
Well, and that's why. And I don't think I should. Obviously, I shouldn't counterweight 3 other people
Oh, that's okay.
liking it more than me. I'm just saying.
Next week,
one.
you'll get your chance to rank your least favorite episodes of the series. So we'll get to
Fair
that
enough.
very soon.
Fourth
Top of the season. Let's start at number 5 and go up.
Okay.
And just quick glance, my opinion, these are 5 great episodes. I don't care that they're season 3. Day of the Dove, Plato's Stepchildren, For the World is Hollow and I Have Touched the Sky, The Enterprise Incident, and our number 1 of the season, Is There in Truth No Beauty?
One, they're great long titles with question marks at the end of them. And I think those are the more of the thinking, but still with some action kind of ones. I know I'm more down on Plato's Stepchildren, but I don't think I hated it as much this time around. Maybe that's just because I paid more attention to Barbara Babcock.
Those are the top 5.
And Day of the Dove is still.
For season
Day of the
3.
Dove is a solid episode.
It's so hard for me to remember anything other than very, very
Well,
basic sketches of
What's number
So-
6?
about this.
Number 6.
We get into this every time.
Number 6 was That Which Survives, which I don't remember that well.
Oh, that's
But
Lucero, yeah.
number 7 was The Empath, which we enjoyed
Okay.
very much.
Yeah.
I will say, I think it's notable that in these top 5, they were, in Corda production order,
Yeah.
when we watched them, 2, 5, 7, 8, 10.
Yeah.
So, when we're looking at the top 5,
Yeah.
we're only looking at the first 10 episodes of the season. Nothing else cracked
Yep.
it. The highest from late in the season is That Which Survives.
Yeah.
Was the 17th episode, hit number 6. Turnabout Intruder ended at number 8,
Okay.
which
All right.
I think's fair.
Yeah.
So that finale went back up there, but in general, and in the middle of the season, we've got All Our Yesterdays, The Way to Eden, so, but season 3, by and large, was front heavy, although, I will say Spock's Brain and The Children Shall Lead are both in our bottom.
Yeah.
That was 1 and 4.
In my mind, and The Children Shall Lead was always like one of the last episodes they aired, but I didn't realize how early it was until we did it this time around.
Maybe you saw in syndication at the end. Well, you weren't there for the original viewings.
Right,
You were in
but once I memorized the order of the shows, at one time I had it memorized.
Yeah.
I could have told you
Really?
1 through 78. Yeah,
Man.
in 6th grade I could have told you.
So, is this a good top 5? Is there, in Truth No Beauty, does that deserve to be number 1 for the season?
It doesn't feel like it to me right now, but it's too hard for me to say. There's too much recency. There really is recency bias for me as far as like the last episodes I've watched, and it's been months since I've seen like any of the ones like in the top 5 or probably top.
I will
10.
say this: when I had and I used to also have all the episodes ranked. Back when I was young,
Wow.
1 to 78 or whatever. Is There in Truth No Beauty was in my top 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always, I really, I
Diana
always loved this
Muller. I
episode.
mean, what a great actress
Yeah.
to pick to bring back for next
Yeah.
year.
So that was the woman with the netting and
Yes.
so forth.
Yeah,
That's
It's-
our number 1 of season 3.
the Medusan.
I remember again listening to the episode of us talking about it. I think the quality was overshadowed by how aggressive the men were being in that weird dinner at the beginning. And just kind of like, let me give you my best pickup line.
That
It
was
so,
the worst scene in a great episode.
Yeah.
in my
Yeah,
opinion.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's true, but it's just, I don't know.
I mean, when I think of the best episodes of Star Trek, of these top 5, the only one that I think springs to mind is not Is There in Truth No Beauty, but The Enterprise Incident.
Yeah.
That is always when I think of the best episodes, that's up there for me. And we have it as number 2, which I think is, I don't necessarily want to displace them because they aired so close together. I think we probably knew what we were talking about at the time. But The Enterprise Incident for me is the most memorable, great episode of season 3.
And what was going on in that one?
It's
The cloaking device,
cloaking
the
device, yeah.
Spock flirted with the commander. And
Oh, okay, right, yeah.
and Kirk
yeah,
stole the
yeah.
cloaking device.
Right, okay.
And I, this isn't a perfect analogy by any means, but I feel like it's kind of a mirror, or it's kind of like mirror and Balance of Terror mushed together for me because fun's not the right word, but it kind of is. There's espionage, yeah. There's danger. There's a beautiful woman. Not only is she a beautiful woman, she's a commander. There's some Spock. There's some Vulcan Romulan stuff. So there's all these great elements going on that I think probably even raised it above what we've got. And also I think it's well executed, all those elements. Whereas later in the season, and obviously some other shows, we I don't know how many episodes we were like, this is a great concept. They botched it.
Yeah.
You know, and I think in that one it's like, I don't know if it's a great concept. There's a lot of great things going on, and they execute them well.
So do you think The Enterprise Incident deserves to displace Is There in Truth No Beauty?
My old man bias and my recency, not recency bias, my old man bias would say And I still love Is There a Truth or Beauty. I would be okay with that as number one. It wouldn't be the end of the world if Enterprise Incident was number one to me, but I still like Is There a Truth, No Beauty is number one.
Which would you prefer to be number one right now?
Is There a Truth, No Beauty.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if Keith Winslet Enterprise is number one because we outvoted him. But I'd still want to hear your opinion.
I think he made a better argument to me for Enterprise Incident. Honestly, the espionage angles and things like that. Little things like
yeah, well, you were talking. I was convinced you were going to argue with you.
Yeah. Honestly, that
and I
sounds
wouldn't have fought you.
that sounds more interesting to me. But
Well, I think Is There a Truth, No Beauty? There were some really interesting, thought-provoking things that got us.
Yeah, I think one's the, lack of a better term, the thinking man sci-fi, and the other one's more of a
action.
Sci-fi sheen over an action-y story, yeah. Romance and betrayal and some kind of Romulan Vulcan, not sex, but sex act.
Sure.
Okay, so as I've been saying, my recollection of all the earlier episodes of the season came solely from me, more chiefly, I'd say, from me re-listening to the episodes we recorded to refresh my memory. So what usually sticks in my mind are all the things we were saying were bad about each individual episodes we were going through. Which is why it's hard for me to go, well, that's what we tend to dwell on, I think.
Yes.
However, as I said, none of these are things I would object to so heartily where I'd be like, this is stupid, this is impossible. Why would you,
Yeah, it's weird. I think I have like stronger feelings about ones in the middle, but that'd be like,
right.
I think the one at 17 should be at 13. And we got into a lot of that. I mean, if Paradise Syndrome, I like better.
So much time at the beginning of the episode, we may have debated the whole
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Any final thoughts before we end this episode about season 3?
I think we are. I think we've come to terms with season 3.
Yeah. We'll rank it with the other seasons next week. Live
Love and prosper.
It's All Been Done presents
Who's Got the Time?